Hi, this is Carrie Brownstein.
This is DJ Premier.
This is Darren Aronofsky.
You got the RZA right here.
Rose McGowan.
Radiohead.
Aisha Tyler.
Tribe Called Quest.
Fred Armisen.
Prince Paul.
Javier Munoz. Seth Meyers.
Frankie Cosmos.
Flying Lotus.
Hi, we're Chaim, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Talkhouse Podcast. I'm Josh Modell. On this week's episode, we've got a whopping 4 guys representing 3 bands, more or less. Hahn and Nik Ewing from Local Natives, and Sean Cimino and Isom Innis from Foster the People, but perhaps more importantly for purposes of this chat, their side project, Peel. Now, Local Natives have been around since around 2005, but it wasn't until their debut album Gorilla Manor hit shelves in 2009 that the California band had its first real moment. They rode a similar wave to bands like Fleet Foxes and Grizzly Bear, with bits of folk and punk and psychedelia all wrapped up in songs that are frequently undeniable earworms. They've built a really impressive catalog since, and the sessions for 2023's Time Will Wait for No One were so fruitful that they actually yielded a companion record that's just coming out now called But I'll Wait for You. It's another gorgeously layered set of songs that feels even a little weirder than what came right before it. Check out a bit of the song April right here. The other half of this conversation is Sean Cimino and Isom Innis, who are best known as part of Foster the People, which had a huge hit straight out of the gate in 2010 with Pumped Up Kicks, and which has been chipping away at incredible pop-inflected songs since. But Cimino and Innis recently released their debut album under the name Peel, which takes a much more psychedelic approach to songs, creating dancey dream pop that sometimes looks back at the 90s through some gauzy glasses. Check out one of the dancier tracks from Peel's album Acid Star right here. This one's called Y2J. In this chat, these old friends immediately head into a conversation about the relative merits of U2 and other bands that you should or should not be ashamed to love. They also chat about their history together, which goes way back, and of course about their latest records. Enjoy.
I'm Sean Cimino.
I'm Isom Innis.
I'm Ryan Hahn.
I'm Nik Ewing.
Great. So what made you guys choose to show up today? I'm surprised to see you show up, Nik.
Do you guys listen to Smartless? You know, there's like a bunch of people on there, and then they always like, and I'm sorry for the listener right now, but there's always like a reveal where they see the video and no one else does.
And that's what you wanted to do?
Right here.
Can you explain the logo, the color? I mean...
Listener, I'm wearing a black and white Peel sweatshirt that Sean gave me when I lived at his house.
That, or did you just go in my closet and steal it?
Honestly, like once he got that, he like very rarely took it off for a while.
That's awesome. I love that.
Wow.
How do you guys feel about wearing band shirts?
I like it.
I'm all about repping your own merch.
Yeah.
That's probably really shameless, but I'm kind of all about it.
Wait, like repping your own merch or other people's?
In high school, like I only wore band shirts. Like it was like I had like 3 Weezer shirts, probably had an Incubus shirt in there. I loved going to shows and getting a shirt. And then at some point I was like, man, it's lame to wear band t-shirts. I don't know. Like it just kind of like I became a snob. And now it's like come back for me. And then at some point I was like, you know what? Screw it. Now like this is coming from a guy wearing like a Nick Cave shirt.
I'm all about it, man.
Yeah.
Maybe like Hot Topic ruined it for us in that age or something. I know we're like mall kids, right? So it was like that was kind of the era. So I feel like anytime I walked into a mall, there was just this Hot Topic store that was just right in your face with like every t-shirt, and you're like, is that really cool? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I remember we saw like New Order at some festival we were playing, and I think like most of the band was wearing a New Order t-shirt.
I remember that.
Not like Local Natives or New Order?
No. New Order was wearing New Order t-shirts.
Yeah, sorry. New Order was wearing New Order t-shirts.
I mean,
all right.
They have the sickest merch. I would do that too.
I'm kind of all about that. I feel like it's I'm just thinking about like a company in the mid 90s when you would have your company shirt and you'd wear that to work.
When you're showing up to your Microsoft office.
Yes.
You got your
just repping your own merch. I just think it's, I think it's a cool move.
Like the polo with the little like embroidery or something.
Just dope it.
It's very like company merch.
I have multiple jackets that say chewing on them.
That's true. You do.
Yeah.
I'm going to lob one up for Sean and actually Isom. I don't know how you feel about this, and Rye, but I've seen you both wear a lot of 90s U2 t-shirts, which feels different than than the mall kids.
Yeah. Ryan and I have had discussions about U2 in the past. I mean, your favorite record is Discotheque, right? Or Pop?
Yeah, Pop. Yeah. I mean, it does feel like I always have to like caveat any discussion with U2 or something. Like I'm just like, I know, I get it. Yeah, I'm proud. And it is funny when I get together with Sean or like some of the guys in Cold War Kids, it's like, we can like speak freely from our fanboy.
It's a safe U2 love.
Yeah.
Isom, where do you stand on it?
Okay. I love U2.
There we go.
Let's do it.
I was thinking about this yesterday. I was just walking and I was listening to your guys' discography, just having a nice little refresh.
Oh, nice.
And I was thinking, I was like, what could we talk about? And something popped in my head, and U2 is triggering this, where I feel like there's a certain point where you're so obsessed with a band and you have to kind of pretend like at a certain point, you have to pretend like you're not as obsessed with them. And for me, like that was Radiohead. Like I'm just going to go ahead and
yeah.
a horrible deed right now to get it out of the way. But so for me, like my U2 was like Radiohead, to where I had to kind of like at a certain point let it go and kind of realize that I would never be them and to just focus on my own artistry. But I still will just love,
I'm picturing like Radiohead as like the Harry and the Hendersons moment where like the Sasquatch is going back into the woods. You're like, get out of here.
So my question to you is, to the U2 boys right here, is so U2.
You're talking Sean and Ryan.
When did that come into your life? And then when did you decide that you had to kind of dumb down maybe how much you loved that band? And then when in your life did you feel proud enough to just own that you love U2?
Oh boy.
Dude, I was pretty indoctrinated at a very young age from my dad, I think. I mean, it was just like on all the time. Like the album Rattle and Hum, like based off the documentary. I mean, like we like wore that out, and we had like the VHS, and then Joshua Tree was like massive. I would say there was like two biggest influences for me of just even playing music. It was my dad, because my dad was a musician, was in a band. And so that was like a big part of me being turned on to music. And then secondly, like, I think it was U2, because like it was just kind of like the epitome of what a band was to me. Like growing up, I was like, man, if that's like what like playing music is like, and the possibility of music, like I'm like so in. Like I was so hooked. And like, I mean, I resonated with, the Edge's guitar playing and how he just like his whole like, ethos and outlook on the guitar. It resonated with me. But so to answer your question, Isom, it started from a really young age. And then, I just feel like it was, to a lot of my friends, just really never cool.
Yeah.
And when did separation start taking place?
I had to have been around like the Apple commercial era, like with Vertigo. With like Vertigo was when like everyone in my band kept going like, uno, dos, tres, catorce. And I knew I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to have to bottle this one up inside.
1, 2, 3, 14.
Of course.
He has.
They just haven't. Oh, they're not allowed to just have fun, Nick? Just play around a bit?
Wait, is there actually an explanation for that though? Or was that's just,
It's just fun, Isom. It's just fun, dude. I'm sorry if I'm shaming you now.
No, but I get it. I think there's an earnestness to U2 that I think, at least growing up the way we did, like that was just not cool. They made me buy into this, like this whole fantasy, this whole myth of like being in a band and like getting to like tour and like see the world, and being in a band could just be this like I don't know, amazing thing to do with your friends. It just really sunk in at an early age. And then, at some point I was like, oh, you can't be that earnest in this world.
Was that high school or was that, where in your journey was that point?
I think for me, it was definitely like end of high school, like beginning of college. And I got really into that album War. And it was like kind of that like post-punk still. Yeah. That vibe. And then funnily enough, it was like they put out this live DVD where they played at this castle in Ireland.
Blaine.
And exactly. And it was just like, I think they had just played the Super Bowl and like, it just felt like they were like everywhere for a moment. But that like live performance DVD just blew my mind. Just watching people sing those songs, I was like, this is incredible.
Isom and I talk about that Super Bowl performance quite a bit, actually.
Oh, really?
I think that's one of the best of all time.
Yeah, it truly is. And like that's crazy because they were like were they all in their 40s at that point? Like I felt like it was just like
probably
late in their career, and it still felt like just like such a cultural moment.
And then and for both of you guys, the last tier of the question is, when in your life did you accept that you love the band? Just rep them.
Gosh.
So many things in life. I just feel like at a certain point, you just get old enough to you like stop caring what other people think. Yeah. And I'm just like, man, I'm gonna like wave that flag.
Yeah.
I can answer for Rye. I feel like it's the last 5 years. You slowly pulled a t-shirt out. You like talked about them unironically in the studio.
Well,
that's the progression. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, this actually brings up a thought I had, like listening to your guys' new record is like, I feel like there's a lot of influences like of like 90s music that I love that honestly, like I'm not to throw Nick under the bus, but I'm surprised Nick's on board with, because I'll like reference certain bands and Nick will like roll his eyes at me like, oh, here comes another like Primal Scream song from Ryan. And I just think there's so many like amazing songs that I feel like I've gone back and re-examined from the 90s that maybe we just kind of took for granted at the time. I'm like in love with so much music from Red Hot Chili Peppers again. Even like, Smash Mouth, rest in peace. I was like, there's so many amazing songs. And what was that band? Filter? Remember that song?
So good.
Take a Picture. There's just like so many songs that I think have stood the test of time. And I feel like I hear little touch points on your guys' new record.
Dude, Manic World feels very U2 in the best way.
Really?
I love that.
Like, or like Stone Roses or The Verve or something.
Have you ever heard of those bands, Sean?
I don't know what you're talking about, actually. I've been nodding my head and saying, yeah.
But you're not really, you're not really following.
You're kind of hitting on something that is, I don't know how much research you did into this, but if you're just kind of cold turkey making those observations, it's like, wow, that's pretty incredible. Because I feel like for me, when we started making the album, kind of where I was and what was inspiring was thinking about that period in my life where I would listen to songs on the radio in the 90s, 2000s, and you nailed like two of them. Smash Mouth.
Yeah.
Pretty much like anything that was on like a VH1 or like a MTV, like top 20 countdown, or all the songs that were just in the regular rotation of the radio station. And at that point in my life, it was before I had really like music taste or enough judgment about what I like. Kind of listen to things and I would absorb the kind of emotion and the feeling of it. And so many, and the Chili Peppers are in there. And I mean, there's like Aqua and like, like there are so many like random.
Even like I was thinking like Third Eye Blind. Like I know, like, again, Nick is probably dying from
I love this.
Cringing so hard.
He's like, when can we move on?
I love how much Ryan and I know each other.
It's also because we grew up in a time where I felt like there was this separation of like something was quote unquote mainstream or something was like indie. And like that period you're talking about, I remember doing my homework in like junior high and high school, and like the Furious 5 at 9 on K-Rock would come on, and it was this like countdown of whatever the biggest songs were, and it was like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Third Eye Blind, the new Radicals.
So good.
Yeah. I feel like one of the first times I really heard Radiohead was when Optimistic came out or something. And that was on there. And I would like call in and request songs, but
sick.
You know, it was before you kind of knew, oh, it's not really cool to like listen to certain things, you know.
Where we were when we started working on this was I kind of was just sick of taste. Like I was sick of, I think Sean and I actually very much, because we've made different mixtape series and we've done some different DJ sets. And I feel like we go very into like krautrock and post-punk. I mean, we really go kind of all in and try to kind of tell our story and our taste is very much included in that. But when we started the record, I just, for some reason, I didn't want to have anything to do with taste. And I wanted to chase the feeling that I got from music before I think that my inner critic and my kind of inner music critic is very connected, but I was just interested in exploring what that was before the inner critic came into the room. But 100% the feeling of those artists and those really like mid 90s, late 90s, early 2000s hits, mainstream hits from the radio. There's just something lodged in my subconscious and you know, even in my body.
Totally. I've told you guys this before, but I'll just say it on the pod. I'm a big fan of what you guys do. And there's a couple songs, like just even on the first listen through that I was like, ooh, that one. Like I think Cycle is just incredible.
Is that the falsetto one?
Yeah.
That
and then you do the at the end when it goes like halftime. Just love that. I feel like that's something that we've wanted to do in almost every song we've ever recorded. You know, like at the end of the day, someone like on Pro Tools like hits a button and it goes halftime, and we're like, oh, that's sick. And we're like, that should be the whole song.
My first thought was like, Ryan and I have talked about this on almost every song we've recorded.
Did it on Violet Street with this song, Someday Now. Yeah, it was all on like these tape loops anyways. And it went halftime at the end. And we always talked about it as like, it goes into Bikini Bottom for a second. It gets like really like, I don't know. I felt like we could have just kept slowing it down and making more songs out of it.
I was listening to that yesterday, actually. That's a really amazing album.
Yeah, that album's great.
And this is changing a little bit, but I tend to kind of listen to the drums first and the groove first, and then kind of the vibe, and then the chords, and then the vocals. But I feel like there's some krautrock influence on that album, especially that track, because it does kind of seem like you made this really bold choice where you just threw the master through, and it kind of sounds like analog effects, and it crescendos down and then it comes back, and then the next song it goes into, it feels almost like a medley of bold like analog effects choices.
It actually was. We did like, tape loops. So we were like playing like 16 tracks with the faders, and then we just slowed the tape machine down and then slowed it down again.
Yeah, like manually, like Sean Everett was the producer on that record, and it was just like all analog. It took like 4 times as long as it probably would have if you just done it in like Ableton or whatever. But it was so fun to do. I felt like we kind of learned like a lesson, like we were on that PR campaign cycle on that record. We were so excited to talk about the process of recording it, and I just could see people's eyes glaze over.
This is going to be a very nerdy conversation.
Yeah.
Funny.
Are you guys very like hands-on when it comes like in the studio with gear, or like when you're like working with like Sean Everett and whoever else is like a part of a record, messing like with like tape loops? Are you guys very like, you guys go in and you get obsessed with certain bits of gear and you like kind of like utilize that gear throughout, or like are you pretty just exploratory? Do you guys like hone in on like, okay, like this is the sound, this is the gear that we're kind of using, and you have parameters?
More and more each record, our skills as engineers have grown. I know Nick and I like spend a lot of time making music, on our own. And I think like the thing I'm still butting up against each record is I'll make a ton of demos and I'll spend all this time tinkering on my own. But then you go to like a proper studio and you're trying to maybe either recreate stuff or do it more professionally. And that's where I kind of like have to lean on maybe whoever is producing or whatever. But like for me, I've just had more and more fun. Yeah. Like working at home and not in a proper studio, just like in the box and just making things sound just unique to me. And I think like going forward, we've been like using more and more of those sounds instead of being like, okay, it's got to all be in the pro studio, the sounds that we can make on our own that feel unique. And then balanced with like, I do feel like we've gone back in a lot of ways to this feeling of, hey, we are a band. That is more and more like rare these days. So like, let's try to capture us playing music together instead of just having it all be like in the box. I think each record trying to find like a balance that feels like exciting to us.
Well, I like spent a lot of time with like your guys' like new record, and thanks so much for like sending it.
Oh, nice.
I loved it. Seriously, it's an important record. And cool. I feel like it's very important, I think. And I think it's just such another level to you guys. And there's just so much more depth. And I just feel like both of your guys' playing especially is just really, really like beautiful. The lyrics are
appreciate that.
Just the way it's captured is just like so good. Just sonically, I felt like you guys created such like an amazing, beautiful world. And it felt like from start to finish, it felt like an arc of a live show. Like I felt like I was in like a ride, like with, I don't want to give too much away. I mean, but Alpharetta, being the first track, I felt like I was very like sucked in immediately with that being the opener. And I feel like that's such a statement within itself of just not coming out guns blazing, but I like leaned in a lot. I'm really excited for everyone to listen to this and get their hands on it.
Thanks, dude.
Really appreciate that. That's so nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like at one point you were saying it sounds very hi-fi and well recorded. And yesterday, kind of going through your guys' discography, listening to I think somewhere in the middle, I was listening to Gorilla Manor, which just flooded in so many memories of, because that was actually before I moved to LA. I was living on the East Coast and
Isom, where did we meet? Where was that show?
Okay.
The basement in like Colorado?
It was, we played a show together in the basement of my stepdad's church in Colorado Springs. And I think it was either 2008. I think it was 2008. I was in a band at the same show as a Colorado Springs super group, which was me and my friend Matt.
Matt and Isom.
That's right. That was, we were the Radiohead of the Colorado Springs church scene.
I remember being pretty blown away by you guys. I remember like walking away and being like, damn, those guys are really good.
All right. I'll take that, dude. Well, I remember because you guys played Sun Hands. And I specifically remember because after you guys played, I remember we all hung out and watching you guys was really inspiring because Colorado Springs was a really not a very good music town. And there weren't many good bands there at all. And I remember when I saw you guys play, I was immediately drawn to your sound. I kept up with what you were doing. And I feel like you guys were the first band that I knew semi-personally that kind of got your shit together and started, because I feel like it was the progression from there, and the show was really good. And I feel like you guys had Sun Hands. And then over the next couple of years, I mean, you really, I'd love to hear about, what that period was like for you guys. But I just remember following you, and then, the name change, and then the record comes out, and then all of a sudden you're playing everywhere and things are picking up. And it was a really inspiring time for me because it kind of made becoming a musician more realistic in a way. Here, the identity of you guys playing together, which is it feels like a band. It feels very organic, but now it has that same unique spirit, but it also sounds very hi-fi. And I noticed, Ryan, that you are a producer on April, which is one of my favorite songs.
So good.
Is that a conscious thing of trying to make a super hi-fi album, or does that just happen through the course of being a band, making records? And I mean, you are a super producer, but it was very, seeing that, like you are like the credited producer on that song is very impressive.
Thank you so much. I mean, I think like with this new record, it's really interesting because we had made a lot of these songs like at the same time as our most recent record, Time Away for No One. So it's kind of this like long extended recording session, this like bigger body of work. And we knew it was going to be 2 records. And at some point we had this second album, but I'm sure you guys think about it this way too, where like this album feels a bit unbalanced, like it's too much down tempo. Like we want to kind of, have some other songs. And so April was a song that came like later to the session. And I think a lot of the songs that I get like producer credit on are songs where it was like I brought a bulk of the sounds, and the demo is kind of pretty close to where the final song ended up. Honestly, like April feels kind of like my Peel song. It feels like I got to like indulge some of the influences that maybe, don't always make it into local native songs. And I think, it's a credit to kind of the way we work in the studio as a band, this kind of, for better or worse, collaborative nature that can make us take longer to make a record, but also can kind of end up with like more unique results. What you're hearing is the kind of like, you are hearing like local natives democracy at work. Like everyone's kind of like weighing in. And then there's a few songs where maybe I get to like throw my weight around a little bit more, like in a song like April, where I kind of had this like specific vision, and a lot of it was me doing like some like legwork up front before we even got to the studio.
Rye is an incredible producer, and I feel like we, over the years, just like he's, I'll say it, very underrated in our band. Because I think people just assume someone singing something, that's who wrote that melody or something. And Ryan is really incredible songwriter and producer. And
thanks, man.
Yeah, dude, you're great.
To follow that up, like since it is so democratic, you guys have 3 singers. How do you where do you begin? I mean, for like Isom and I, like with Peel, it's like it's just 2 of us, so it's pretty easy to navigate, where things will start or end, or who's feeling about singing on what and lyrics.
Yeah, is the vocals split pretty even on the Peel record between the 2 of you?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I actually feel like your guys' voices are pretty similar. Like, I actually don't know who's singing this one.
Really? No, that's so sick. No, I love that actually. Totally did not hear that, but I think that's awesome.
There's a chunk of tracks where we actually will sing at the same time. And then there's another chunk where we kind of split it up. And then there are some songs where it's just one of us. For this album, the vocals were always the last thing, minus there were a couple songs that Sean brought. But for the rest of them, we, at the end, if we like something enough, we'll almost play like karaoke over the song. And it's really easy to tell whose voice fits, I think, over the track. And then sometimes it's both of our voices that fit.
Yeah, it totally is karaoke. There's times where Isom and I are literally standing next to each other in front of the speakers and the computer or wherever, and we're playing the track, and Isom will be singing something, then he passes me the microphone, and then I'll sing it, and then it's like literally like just passing the football back and forth.
Yeah.
Not that's really like knowing who will be, what'll be like really the main melody or who's singing what, but it is honestly it's just pretty free.
When you grow up with somebody or you make music with someone for a long time, I feel like you can take on each other's voices. I'm thinking of like Ezra and Rostam, where like their vocal sensibilities are so similar, and it's just like, because they were together in a band in their 20s or something. And I guess I'm curious how long you 2 have been making music together, and do you feel like there's like, I know Ryan and I, like we have a shorthand. Ryan, you were like making jokes before you even said 90s bands right now, because you're like, Nick's eyes are going to roll. Like he knows my music sensibilities so well that he's roasting me before he's saying it. But like, do you feel like you guys have some of that, or like how long have you been working and making music together?
We met 2011, Isom?
2010.
2010?
Yeah.
Was this before you guys were playing in Foster?
I was the last player to get added to the Foster the People world. And first time I met Sean was coming to the downtown rehearsal space. And I had met Mark before, but I hadn't met any of the other band members. But I remember going to the rehearsal space and watching them play a song. And I remember before I even said any words to Sean, but they just played this song and they played it so well. And like Sean's guitar was like so dialed and he was singing these harmonies. And I'm like, holy shit. It sounded like very professional to be coming out of like a warehouse rehearsal space.
I didn't really know what was happening. Isom just like came in and just like was like, "Can you guys like play a song?" And so we like all played a song, and Isom's just standing there like listening. And I'm like, "What's happening right
Who's
now?"
Who's this A&R rep over here?
Yeah, I'm like, who is this?
Yeah.
He's got this like polo shirt with this embroidery on it. It says like, I don't know what it says, where he's from, what company he works for.
Yeah.
But
nice callback.
Yeah, that was the first time. But we over the years, we've always on and off tour, we've always made music with each other. And I've always tried to be like as collaborative as possible. And I just feel like it's just been a process through, I guess, 2010 till now, just like always trying to be as prolific as we can, always trying to like write with each other. So there's a lot. I mean, especially like I'm sure you guys know, when you're on the road, you're in the same cultural whirlwind. Like you're experiencing everything at the same time with each other. You guys are being turned on to the same music, same like style, what people are maybe wearing. You're picking up cues. Like Isom and I mean, it's just been so many years of that between us.
One other thing I love about the project is how cohesive, not only like musically, but like visually and aesthetically it is. And I feel like what you were talking about, like you guys getting into the same music, but maybe the same like clothing and everything. And I think even just, on the EP and now like here, everything feels so dialed. And I've always been jealous of that.
It's so rad, dude. Yeah, this visuals, just everything you create around it.
It's funny you guys say that because I feel the same with you. I mean, Nick, you're such an amazing designer.
That's only because Nick, I feel like, has really stepped up in like recent years and really like honed in on a thing. But with 5 guys, it's really hard. In a lot of ways, I feel like the 5 of us have been slowly like listening to different things and then like bringing it back to like the mothership or something.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, oh, it would be cool if we were like, I don't know. I imagine like the dudes in Interpol, like all just listen to the exact same thing or something. And they like wear the same clothes. And I'm like, sometimes it's hard to bring everyone onto the same page. I was trying to think of other artists that have done a good job of that over the years. Was there any like when you guys were growing up or when you guys were talking about influences that you're like, this band does it right?
I mean, come on, Coldplay.
Yeah.
Rush of Blood to the Head. Sean and I actually watched that documentary again, like at some point when we were bored, like while we were making the record and kind of in the editing phase. But that specifically, there's this tour documentary of, I think it's 2002. It's on like the Rush of Blood to the Head tour. And it's just very behind the scenes. And I remember seeing that and just, there's so much in it. Like the music's amazing, the performance is amazing, but then also you get to see the dynamic of kind of this new band making their way in the world and just watching the way they interact together and really observing. It just looked like a brotherhood. And I wanted that. And
totally.
And be like, that's what I want to do.
And then we just were both very much on the same page and very much influenced by Factory Records, like everything that they were doing was just like the pinnacle of cool in our eyes. We're just like, how, like they just were on something that was just so beyond what anyone else was doing.
He touched was so rad.
It was just so good and it was so elevated. And there was just like a freedom there. And we love Factory Records. And so we kind of just were like chasing after that, like feeling or that spirit.
For me, it's been really inspiring watching Sean's development over the years in visual art. And I feel like it can't remember what year. I mean, you've probably always been doing it, but I feel like there was, I don't know, maybe it was like 8 years ago or something. I just kind of started noticing he was making more art and was kind of immersing himself in that world. And that for me, for this project, is a really big inspiration point. Is Sean is so good with bringing and making kind of inspiring pieces of art that really sometimes they can inspire the mood of music.
Yeah, it's like that thing of like you can pull from influences, but at the end, like it's always going to go through this like filter, especially with our band, at least it's like 5 filters, and it kind of gets like mutated into like maybe our version of something. I keep like kind of half kidding, but like April was like sort of inspired by like Basement Jaxx, like where's your head at? Because I was just like,
love that.
Because I was just like, this like dirty like sub bass is kind of the like chorus of this song, and I was like, that's weird. And I don't know, just things like that where I'm like, you're pulling from something that maybe people wouldn't expect, but inevitably it's going to become like your own. The last song on the record, like The Cloak, is that the one? I think like that's another probably like maybe my favorite song. And I always love when like a record feels very thoughtful in that way, where like, oh, the last song is this torch waving, almost like summary of the record. And it like almost feels like at the beginning, it's got like that first chord of that, like, what's that Radiohead song? No Surprises, maybe, where it's just kind of like, it feels like it's like sampled, like pitched down, but then it becomes this other thing. And I was like, that's so sick. Like
that bass line is sick. Who's playing that, by the way?
Oh, that's an Isom. That's dirty Isom.
That's tasty. Like a basic, it sounds like, or something.
I remember when he played that line, and then the ending synth line. It was like transcendent for me.
The song is ridiculous.
The song didn't almost happen. I mean, it was like a demo that I had that was kind of like a therapy song almost. And it was just like, felt good that it just existed, and just we weren't thinking of making any more music for the record. But then we were at Sargent's Recorders, or that's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
You guys recorded
we
there.
did some recording there, yeah.
And my brother Nathan was asked if we wanted to come record there, and that's where Cycle came out, and the Cloak. But
oh wow,
the Cloak was like an afterthought of like, like Isom, like I think Isom was like, yeah, maybe we like just put drums on this like thing that you showed me. And I'm so glad, because it, like, the way Isom heard that song and approached that song was just a great way to kind of just bookend the record.
That song, because that was one of the two last songs that we finished for the album were Cycle and The Cloak. And Sean, I remember he sent me this voice memo. I feel like it was a voice memo. If not, it was like a very rough recording of him playing acoustic and singing. And it sounded immediately, it was just great. And the melody was really good, and it had a flow. But then when we were recording it, I really, now when I am listening and I'm thinking about my favorite songs from the album, that's one of them, because it has the way it was produced. I have a tendency as a drummer, because I'm a drummer first and approach things from the drums out, for better or for worse, on a lot of stuff. And I have this tendency to really want to like over process the drums and to be really busy and to try to find like, where's the energy? Like what is a beat that I feel that would be inspiring enough to play live and inspiring enough to make you move. And that was really, I think, a big inspiration point on the record for me. And I think Sean as well in the beginning was, how do we make dance music, but then filter dance music through a band lens and with performances, organic performances, especially on drums. But with The Cloak, by the time we had finished the record, I was kind of sick of trying to make a really energetic drum performance. And I was just kind of to just kind of almost like take the back seat. And one of the things about the production that I really like on that song is there's this little drum machine kind of in the background, almost this kind of beach housey kind of drum machine thing that Sean programmed. And he ended up retracking like the acoustic guitar to that simple drum machine. And really the way that Sean's playing the rhythm guitar, it almost becomes like a hi-hat. It's one of my favorite moments of production on the album because it's just letting the song take complete control.
I feel like so many of our songs used to start with just like the almost like the drum was a very like just a central focus. And I feel like we still like, indulge that part, but like a lot of the time you find that like a simpler drum beat is going to allow the song to come through more.
Yes.
I mean, gosh, I keep thinking about the record that you guys just recorded, and like I feel like I hear like a lot of different influences, but like one that I was kind of curious to ask if it was or not, but was like kind of like orchestral, like 60s at all, like an influence on it? Like a David Axelrod slash like
man.
David Axelrod slash Marconi, because I love that. And it's not obvious by any means. It's like not on the nose, but it's just like so tastefully, just like, oh my God. Like
I feel like we said those exact names, especially on a couple of those songs. Yeah. And then, but it's the conversation too that we have internally. We're just like, oh man, is it too much like that?
Again, it became almost like a running joke where it was like, I was like, I want nylon guitar and vibraphone on every song. And I think I almost got my way.
And bongos or congos.
Oh, and bongos.
Yeah.
Conga man.
And Nick would just put his bucket hat on me, and I would go in and I would play bongos, and the guys would be laughing, but I was like, "You'll see,
you'll see,
you'll see."
He says that a lot.
But I think that was a huge influence. And again, it's like sometimes it comes through more, sometimes it's maybe just like an element, but that's always definitely been, at least for me, like a North Star. Like there's a song I love on the record called "Camera Shy."
Yes, that was what I feel like.
That's the one with the tremolo.
So good.
Yeah, it oddly became more like Smiths-y than I was anticipating, but I think that's a lot to do with the tremolo guitar. But that song, I'd been listening to a lot of the new Bad Bad Not Good record and so much like 60s like orchestral stuff, and I just wanted to get a lot of that influence in there. But again, that song just gets filtered in all these different ways and becomes something different.
Yeah, that was a ride, that song. I mean, it like where it like started and then where it ends, I was not expecting that. And like when that middle eight comes in, I was just like, so like, I was just like laughing.
That's one of my favorite parts of the record is the bridge of that song.
That's such a good example of filtering or taking your influences and, filtering them through your lens, because that's one of the songs that I was really drawn to in the album, and specifically that tremolo sound, how it sounds like the song, it almost sounds like the meat of the chords, or it sounds like that is kind of the driving force where like every other layer is kind of corresponding to that part. And I had when I heard it, I was just like, I really liked this sound. It just sounds really experimental and cool. And I haven't heard it like this before, and I just really liked it. And it's really funny hearing you talk about the inspirations behind it, because you just mentioned the Smiths, and I'm like, oh, hey, How Soon Is Now is by the tremolo. But it's funny because I don't hear How Soon Is Now at all in that.
Same,
it wasn't, and I'm pretty good at, if something sounds like an artist, I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds like, this influence. It's funny. It sounds nothing like that to me. And then I didn't even pick up really the 60s influence in that either.
Do you guys have this conversation where you're like, when you're going to start doing press or talking about an album, you're like, all right, I know these three artists were an inspiration, but we're not going to name them?
Yes
and no.
Prior to this interview.
I feel like we have those conversations where it's like, all right, like that's kind of where we started talking about the shame of U2. But like certain, we would talk about like, maybe let's not say that one publicly.
Come on, you have to say it. I put Radiohead out there.
I don't even think it was anything like shameful on this record or anything like that. I think it's just more like you sometimes feel like you only have like one or two shots at like crafting the quote unquote narrative that people are going to talk about. Like you only get so many chances. And so you're like, if you say the wrong one, that's just the one that people run with. So I think it came from that, maybe.
Yeah.
Years of feeling like you like put your foot in your mouth and then you're like, oh, great. That's the only thing we're going to talk about now. But yeah, I mean, it's funny just looking back on where songs start to where they end up. So much of the time with our band, at least, they take turns. They take different, unexpected twists.
I mean, that's the cool thing. I mean, pros and cons, I'm sure, but just
for sure.
having so many people come in with their own like influences they're gathering on their own time, and then coming into the song is like, that's wild. You know, that's like a lot to manage. And like you guys like are about to put out like your 7th album, right? 7th?
6.
Oh boy. Okay. I was like, is it really 7th? Good God.
Good God.
But yeah, we're almost there.
I mean, that's like congratulations. Like that's massive. The fact that like you guys have that many albums, like I've never done that. And the fact that you guys are like still making incredible albums and you have such a hungry like fan base and you're making new fans, like, man, that's huge. And I just feel like, you know, major props to all you bad boys and local natives to keeping it together. That's inspiring.
Thanks, dude.
I just love that you are championing being in a band in 2024 and doing from the top level, because I feel like in some ways the art form of being in a band, just with the way music has the trend of the way music is being consumed now, I feel like it's forcing that funnel to get more and more narrow. And this is my personal view, is that I think that with those consumption habits, it doesn't really make financial sense for people to want to be in a band, because it takes a lot of commitment, both, you know, time wise and financially, to be able to make the time to all get together in a room and to make time for that process of collaborating together and, you know, distilling the idea and filtering that through, you know, 4 or 5 creative voices. And I'm sure that that's you might have to be in a band to kind of recognize the journey that takes. And also I think the passion it takes to want to go down for that ride. But you guys have always done it so well, and you just keep on getting better with every record.
Thanks, sis.
I love this. I feel like the older we get, it just feels like so much in life is kind of pushing you in this like kind of like isolated way. Like, I mean, obviously like Nick and I are fathers now. It's like our time is even more limited. And then just so much with modern life is like, nah, you don't need to go out and do something. Just like hang at home, and you can like, it just feels like you put the effort in. And I'm more and more grateful for, even though it's really hard at times, but I'm really grateful to have like these like musicians that I also feel like brothers, and like we're just kind of like, yeah, like as hard as it is, it still feels like I'm just more and more grateful to have it in my life, you know?
Wow. That's amazing, man. Well, what a way to wrap that up.
I mean,
yeah.
Wow.
So wait, what was your band's name again?
That's how you wrap it up.
Thanks for listening to the Talkhouse Podcast, and thanks to Sean Cimino, Isom Innis, Nik Ewing, and Ryan Hahn for chatting. If you liked what you heard, please follow Talkhouse on your favorite podcasting platform and check out all the great stuff at talkhouse.com. This episode was produced by Myron Kaplan, and the Talkhouse theme is composed and performed by The Range. See you next time.